Christoper Mouse, The Tale of a Small Traveler. Chapter 1. At Miss Crimmen's Place. My life began in the most commonplace way. I was born in an ordinary wire cage on a soft bed of paper shavings. A few pieces of lettuce and a few clumps of cheese were strewn here and there. At first, my eyes remained shut so that I could not see anything around me. I slept most of the time, for I was very weak. I remember wondering why there was a rustling sound whenever I moved, but before long I grew so tired thinking about it that I fell asleep again. Finally the day came when I was able to open my eyes. I saw the cage where I was lying, and I climbed unsteadily to my feet. Step by step, I began to explore. I nosed around among the papers. I sampled lettuce and cheese. I drank from the round saucer that stood in the corner. The surface of the water cast a reflection. In it, I saw myself for the first time. My eyes, my nose, my fur, and my whiskers. Then, one after another, I met 4 beings who looked like my own image in the water. They were my 3 brothers and my sister, Anna. She was smaller than they were, and from the beginning I knew I liked her best. When my mother saw that I was up and about, she began explaining things to me. "You are a white mouse, like the rest of us," she told me, "and you will live in this cage for 6 or 7 weeks until Mrs. Crimmins comes to fetch you." "Who is Mrs. Crimmins?" I asked her. "She is the woman who owns us," my mother said. "In fact, she owns everything in this room, the food we eat, the cage we live in, everything." "Do you like Miss Crimmins?" I asked. My mother did not reply at once. She frowned and twitched her whiskers reflectively for several moments, and then I heard her sigh. "I suppose I like her well enough," she told me. "She might treat us worse than she does. Some owners are good, though I suspect not many of them, and some owners are wicked, I imagine, but I can't be sure that Mrs. Crimmins falls somewhere in between." Before I could ask her anything more, I heard a noise behind me. Then I turned. I saw a stout woman with bright red hair had come into the room. Mother told me that it was Mrs. Crimmins bringing us our food. I'll never forget the first time she opened our cage to feed us. There was a long trap door at the top of the cage. She slid it back, and as she did, I heard a terrible grating sound that made the fur along my spine stand on end. Her fingers appeared at the opening. They held strips of bruised lettuce and bits of yellow moldy cheese. She dropped them into our cage, wriggling those fat fingers above our head like 5 pale sausages. They were not a pretty sight to see. Having given us the lettuce and cheese, she dropped in our weekly treat, 6 well-salted mixed nuts, and they really were a treat for us. Many people think we dote on cheese, that it's our favorite food, but that's simply not true. Give any mouse a pecan, or a walnut, or an almond or a cashew, and he'll be extremely grateful. All mice have a passion for nuts, and that's the way to charm us if you ever should wish to. I didn't know what to make of Mrs. Crimmins after that. Certainly the food she fed us most of the time was nothing to boast of, especially the cheese, which must have been considerably older than I was myself. And yet she was not entirely devoid of kindness, for she also provided us with a weekly treat of salted nuts. Was she good, or was she not? I began to see why my mother had answered so vaguely. I thought a great deal about Mrs. Crimmins in the days that followed. If you are small and weak, and totally at the mercy of someone else, you have no choice but to consider the true nature of your owner. What she is like is extremely important to you. As the days went by, I continued to observe Mrs. Crimmins whenever I could, and the more I did, the more I began to wonder about something my mother had said the first time she spoke to me. It was a remark that often troubled me as I wandered around our cage, or as I played with my brothers and sisters among the papers, shavings, and strips of lettuce underfoot. One day, I decided I must know the answer. I came to my mother, who was sitting in a corner, and said, "You once told me that I would live here 6 or 7 weeks, and then Miss Crimmins would come to fetch me. What do you mean when you said that? Why will she come to fetch me?" I saw a startled look in my mother's eyes. A grave expression stole across her face. She pretended to be unconcerned, but my question had pained her. I had never seen her upset before. Suddenly I felt a pang of fear. My sister Anna and my 3 brothers must have felt the same anxiety. They began to crowd around me until all 5 of us were sitting in a half circle at my mother's feet. She remained silent for a moment more. "Very well," she said at last. "I will answer your question. I suppose the time has come when you must know what lies ahead." We nodded solemnly. Our usual playfulness had disappeared. It was clear that she intended to say was important. It seemed equally clear that some of it could be rather grim.